here's 7 things I want you to think about stop doing as you approach what I call the youth of your senior years. In order to fully enjoy this phase of your life, in order to squeeze all the juice out of what life has to offer. You've worked hard to get to this phase in your life, and I want to make sure you fully enjoy it. Okay, so the first one is I want you to think about stop spending time with people that do not uplift you, and after you spend time with them, you feel better about life and you feel better about yourself. You know, life is too short. If you're in your 50s and you're in your 60s and you have somebody in your life that you hang out with and you feel worse after you spend time with them, you know what? It's okay. It's okay for you to say, I'm not going to spend time with that person anymore. And you know what? You can be candid. You know, you can either just not spend time with them, or if you want to share with them, hey, you know, when you say this stuff, it makes me feel bad about myself. And, you know, I like you, I want to hang out with you, but I just can't have that negativity in my life. And it's an awkward conversation. I have had that conversation with several people. And one of two things happen. They either change, and frankly, you know, it's going to take 2, at most 3 times. Don't give them more than 3 warnings. But they will change, or you just cut them out of your life. So that's the first one. Okay. The next one I want you to think about stop doing is I want you to think about stop resisting change in your life. I was super guilty of this myself until the pandemic came around. And you know what? The pandemic was the world shaking up my snow globe. I felt like I was living in a snow globe. And I liked the fact that everything was settled, right? I'd lived in the same house for over 20 years. I had friends and community that I had built up over 20 years. I had 20 years worth of junk in my house. And the pandemic came and kind of shook up my snow globe. And I was tossed and turned, and everything was tossed and turned. I ended up selling my house. I ended up working remotely from a couple different foreign countries, still isolating, but you know, in a different place. And that freed me up. You know, the pandemic was an awful thing, but like any awful situation, there are positives that come out of it. And in my life, at least, the positive that came out of it was it released me from the shackles and the comforts of just having the status quo for such a long period of time. And I can tell you, my life has a lot more adventures now because of that. And I want you to have that in your life as well. So think about freeing yourself from the shackles that cause you to resist change. I want you to think about embracing some change. I want you to think about doing things that maybe scare you a little bit. I think it's good for all of us in the youth of our senior years to do some things that scare us. Okay, the next thing I want you to stop doing is I want you to stop taking your time for granted. You know, many of us, again, in the youth of our senior years, in our 50s and early 60s and late 60s, you know, we're still fairly healthy. We're still fairly active. We can still, in my case, still run a 5K, run a 10K occasionally without feeling sore. But that's not going to be that way forever. And if you're 60 years old, you likely, and I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, you likely have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time in front of you. And I want you to treat each week as precious. I mean, it would make sense for us to have a calendar up that has 1,000 weeks and you know, kind of mark them off and say, did I take advantage of the 52 weeks in the last year? You know, did I squeeze all the juice out of that orange from the year? And if we didn't, you know, the important thing is to look at the next year and say, what am I going to do different? Okay, the next thing I want you to think about is your health. I want you to stop prioritizing other things. I want you to stop compromising your health in order to do other things, in order to work an extra hour at work, in order to, you know, to do something for somebody else, which a lot of us fall into the trap of that. Your health and your needs are important. So I want you to stop putting all these other needs in front of your own and not taking care of yourself. And whether that health is your physical health or your mental health, they're both critically important. And I want you to stop selling yourself short by not investing that time in taking care of yourself. So I want you to spend that time. I want you to invest in yourself. And I want you to stop spending resources, whether that's your time, your mental energy, or your money, on other people. Yes, we have to do both, but I want you to stop putting yourself last, and I want you to put yourself higher in that list of priorities. That's going to be hard for a lot of us. Okay, another one is, after 50 or 60 years, we got a lot of life behind us. And, nobody gets through life without regrets. None of us get through life without things that we would have done differently. And I want you to stop living with regret. I want you to forget what, we all have things that we wish we had done differently. But that's in the past. And I want you to think about living in the present, right? The past is over. The future's not guaranteed to any of us. So really think about living in the present. And if there's anything in your past, and I have things in my past that I'm like, yeah, I should have done that. I should have handled that better. But forgive yourself. I want you to stop living with regret. Okay. The other one is I want you to stop pretending that you're somebody that maybe you're not. And I know that's hard for that to come off smoothly and elegantly, but I want you to feel comfortable being yourself. If you're in the youth of your senior years, if you're not going to be yourself now, when are you going to be yourself, right? So this is our last chance. And, I learned this lesson maybe 20 years ago, and I'm really grateful that I did. And, not everybody is going to be a fan of Azuls, and that's okay. I work in a field where people expect me to, I've been a fee-only financial advisor for over 20 years. People expect me to show up in a suit, and sometimes I do, but if I don't feel like wearing a suit, if I feel like wearing a sports coat and, maybe even a t-shirt, a nice fitting t-shirt, a nice pressed t-shirt underneath that sports coat, that's what I wear. If I feel like wearing a nice pair of blue jeans with that sports coat, that's what I wear. If I'm with somebody and they're talking nonsense and I don't agree with that, I either share that I don't agree with that, or maybe I just leave the I leave that setting because I don't want to be somebody that I'm not. Okay, and the next one is something that probably few of us have a challenge now, so it's likely maybe a warning for another day in the future. But I just encourage you. I want you to stop poo-pooing and putting down new technology and saying, "Oh, I don't need that." And I'm going to tell you a quick story. My parents, when they were a little bit older than me, decided they were not going to jump on the email wagon. And they stayed true to that course. My father's passed, but my mother's still with me in her 80s. She never got into email. And fortunately for her, the new thing for communications came out, which was smartphones and texting. And so she was able to communicate easily with her family, with me, my brother, my sister, her grandkids, because of smartphones. But both of my parents said, this email, why do I need that? If somebody needs me, they can send me a letter. Don't let that happen to you. And related to this, I want you to consider watching this video up here, which is 5 reasons to retire as soon as you can. It's kind of part 2, not completely related to this, but enjoying your retirement is important, so I'll see you in there as well. It's hard to pull the trigger. This will help you pull the trigger. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in there. Bye-bye.